Let's take a look at how the Matrix provides clues about the simulation which we reside within. In my book, Simulation Secrets, Don't Be Afraid, towards the end I have a little fun by digging deeper into how the simulations could have or would have played out on Earth by looking at the mainstream media as well as historical events that have occurred to try to paint a little better picture of the true history of life on Earth. So the chapter is simulation speculation. So let's be clear that that's all it is. This is just having a little fun and trying to connect some dots. But in this case, I look at the Golden Age. According to Greek mythology, there were 5 successive ages of man, the first being known as the Golden Age. Greek poet Hesiod, in a late 6th century BC writing titled Works and Days, describes the mythical Golden Age. Men lived like gods without sorrow of heart, remote and free from toil and grief. Miserable age rested not on them, but with legs and arms never failing, they made merry with feasting beyond the reach of all evils. When they died, it was though they were overcome with sleep, and they had all good things. For the fruitful earth unforced bare them fruit abundantly and without stint. They dwelt in ease and peace upon their lands with many good things, rich in flocks and loved by the blessed gods. Now let's take a look at a clip from the original Matrix movie where Agent Smith appears to be describing the mythical Golden Age and how the simulation had to be changed because it apparently wasn't working.
Have you ever stood and stared at it, marveled at its beauty, its genius? Billions of people just living out their lives, oblivious.
Did you know that the first Matrix was designed to be a perfect human world where none suffered, where everyone would be happy? And it was a disaster. No one would accept the program. Entire crops were lost. Some believed that we lacked the programming language to describe your perfect world, but I believe that as a species, human beings define their reality through misery and suffering. So the perfect world was a dream that your primitive cerebrum kept trying to wake up from, which is why the Matrix was redesigned to this.
So if the first simulation wasn't working because the people weren't buying it or believing it to be authentic, or if it wasn't challenging people and giving people ample opportunities to grow by reducing their entropy, which is the essential goal of the simulation or of the creator of the simulation. I won't get into that right now, but for more information on that, check out Thomas Campbell's work. And I'll leave a few links to videos at the end of this demonstrating how indeed this is a simulation and kind of how it works. So long story short, if the simulation wasn't meeting its mandate, then it would have had to be reset. Unlike a video game like The Sims, our simulation is evolving and you can't simply turn it off and restart it. It is based on time, which is constantly incrementally moving forward. So one way to reset a civilization essentially is to flood it out, and it appears that that's happened once, if not many times throughout our past based on the historical record. A 2012 ABCnews.com article titled "Evidence Noah's Biblical Flood Happened," says Robert Ballard, describes how scientists found proof of a Great Flood type event in the Black Sea region off of the coast of Turkey. Robert Ballard describes what occurred. "We went in there to look for a flood," he said, "not just a slow-moving, advancing rise of sea level, but a really big flood that then stayed. The land that went under stayed under. 400 feet below the surface, they unearthed an ancient shoreline, proof to Ballard that a catastrophic event did happen in the Black Sea. By carbon dating shells found along the shoreline, Ballard said he believed that they have established a timeline for that catastrophic event, which he estimates happened around 5000 BC. Some experts believe this was around the time when Noah's flood could have occurred. It probably was a bad day, Ballard said. At some magic moment, it broke through and flooded this place violently, and a lot of real estate, 150,000 square kilometers of land, went under. The theory goes on to suggest that the story of this traumatic event, seared into the collective memory of the survivors, was passed down from generation to generation and eventually inspired the biblical account of Noah. And I find this paragraph to be the most compelling of the entire article. It says the earlier Mesopotamian stories are very similar, where the gods are sending a flood to wipe out humans, said biblical archaeologist Eric Klein. There's one man they choose to survive. He builds a boat and brings on animals and lands on a mountain and lives happily ever after. I would argue that it's the same story. A 2016 article on BusinessInsider.com titled "These Skeletons Prove a Mythical Mega Flood Really Happened" demonstrates that these large-scale floods weren't isolated to one single region and appear to have occurred throughout many regions, if not everywhere on Earth. The article says, Cohen and an interdisciplinary team of scientists presented the first definitive evidence from the victims of a killer earthquake that a catastrophic flood really did occur along the Yellow River about 4,100 years ago, overwhelming communities more than 1,200 miles downstream. These findings add credence to the story of Yu the Great, which is perceived by many to be solely a legend and not based in fact. The article continues, the collaboration pulled together geological evidence for floods with the archaeological remains of a prehistoric site downriver to pinpoint the severity, flood, and its date, which matches well with early Bronze Age China and the story of Yu. Their findings will be published in the journal Science. This is the first time a flood of scale large enough to account for it has been found, Cohen said. The outburst flood could have caused social disruptions lasting downstream for years. So the science behind these great flooding events seems pretty sound, and if we use the common sense and logic test by going down to any creek that I've ever been to has fossilized remains, which should only occur from a flash flood type event. For example, a fish dies in the water now and it's gone within a couple days. For something to be encapsulated in time points to a massive and quick-hitting flood. Of course, this is also outlined in the Bible, providing another angle of support. Like I mentioned before, this is only speculation. I hope you find it interesting. To understand more about our simulation, I highly recommend Tom Campbell's work, and I also encourage you to check out some of my other videos and my book, Simulation Secrets. Thank you for watching.